Hey, this is our third discussion. We're with Isaac, Gazelle, Jaden, Georgia, and myself, Oscar. So today's theme is new criticism. So to start off, we're going to have a brief summary from each person as we go through the circle. So Isaac, you can go ahead.
Okie dokie. So since the last time we spoke, I've kind of read a lot, so this is gonna be a journey. So it kind of starts off with kind of like a lot has happened. So it's basically Lael trying to see Gita as much as he can, but since there's so many people coming to Auschwitz, like there's hundreds of thousands of people coming through, they are actually kind of like going in, tattooing, and then like they go out and they kind of just like rotate through. So that's his job, like 7 days a week. I think it's 16 hours a day basically. And he's just trying to see Gita as much as possible until one day an American plane, which is thought by the prisoners, is flown over. And this American plane, like all the prisoners run out and they're like, yo, like down here, like come and save us. And they're all pointing towards the crematoriums, and they like blow this up. And then, so obviously the plane doesn't see them, they're just going over. And as soon as the plane goes over, all the snipers towers just open fire on each and every one of the prisoners who was just out in the open trying to say, save us. And each one is killed. And at this time, Lael was with Gita because Lael was in Gita's block, or they were in the administration office where Gita works. And Lael was like, you need to go back to your block and make sure that you're safe there. And Lael actually finds out later that this was actually the most possible, like this is the dangerous thing that he could have done because she could have got fired at, and he kind of regrets doing that. But as soon as like the next day or the few next days, Lael kind of runs a contraband store where he sells sausages, chocolates, and he gets jewels for that. So he gets jewels from this place called Canada, where the women go and work and they kind of like sew in new suits for the prisoners.
Just to clarify, you're not talking about the country of Canada?
No, it's a block called Canada,
Oh, okay.
and they work in Canada per se.
Right.
I don't know why it's called Canada. The thing like kind of never goes into it, but
That's ironic.
but I don't know. So two SS troops find all his contraband in his room because Lael sleeps in his own room for his protection because he's the tattooer and everybody thinks he works for the SS. But he sleeps in his own room and two SS troopers find it, basically take him to the head guy, and the head guy is like, okay, we can't have this happen, take him to Block 11. And Block 11 is where they torture everyone. They kind of get answers out of like many people. And behind Block 11 is the Black Wall. And the Black Wall is where they lined up all these inmates and they would shoot them down one by one. And so basically throughout kind of a few chapters, it's Lael just like, am I going to survive? Like, am I ever going to see Gita again? Am I ever going to find out if my family's alive? So basically he gets out because he knew somebody that was in Block 11. His name was Jacob, or I don't really know how to say it. It's like Jacob. And he's like this big, Jacob. It's this big, like, I think 7'5" dude that came to Auschwitz and they couldn't find him a job. So now he actually beats the inmates into basically submission.
Sounds like a nice guy.
Well, no, he actually is a nice guy, and like Lael found him and like basically, like drove him to safety. But Lael actually never found out what happened to Jacob. And he finally finds Jacob, and he's been torturing and killing these Jews. And he says like if he kills one Jew, then he saves 10, because like if somebody steals something and doesn't tell like who stole it, then he's actually saving many lives and having that one Jew being killed.
So he's trying to find reason with what he's doing.
Yes, exactly. So he gets out and he's sent back to his old block, and he kind of stays there, and he's badly beaten, he's whipped, he's like a broken nose, broken ribs, broken everything. And he pleads with this one girl to kind of go back to his old room because this one girl is sleeping with the head guy at Auschwitz. And she kind of asked him like, oh, you, like, I've done so much for you, like, will you do something for me finally? And she gets back, or Lael back into his own room, and Lael tries to start up his contraband business again.
Again?
Yeah, he starts to try it again.
Oh my god, that's so dangerous.
Yeah, because the kind of guard that watches Lael, like, knows everything about Lael, and he's like, they're like watching you like a hawk, basically, because they still don't know who brings in the stuff, but it's actually these two workers that work building houses for Auschwitz. And the last thing that's happened is, or the second to last thing that's happened is that women from the ammunition block where they would build and make bullets would actually carry out gunpowder in their nails. And they kept bringing out this gunpowder until they hear 4 bombs. And it's 4 crematoriums that actually blew up. So yeah, that sent the whole camp into a fuss.
Yeah.
And the last thing was that Lael lives with the Romanis, or the Gypsies. And one day, all of them are taken out at night, and this is children and women. There's some men, but it's mostly children and women. They're actually taken from their block. And Lael's like, where are you going, where are you going? And he had a lot of friends in there. And he finds out the next day, like, where they went. And he finds out by a little piece of ash hitting his head. And he looks over at all the crematoriums, and they're all like full force, like going, and it's all of the Gypsies.
Aww.
Yeah. So that's basically where I'm at. Yeah.
Story time. Okay.
Okay, so, in this story, The Boy in Striped Pajamas, it's about this boy named Bruno, who has a father who works in the Fury, like for Adolf Hitler and the Germans. So his father got a new job, so they had to move to a new city. And this is close to a campsite that's run by his father. And in this campsite, it's filled with a bunch of innocent Jews who are being like tortured and killed, or like being set to do work, labor for nothing. And it's basically just like a concentration camp filled with Jews and run by the Nazis. And this boy can see like the whole campsite from the window of his room, and he can see people from like children ages like 5 up to 70, and he was just like, in that barrier he was able to go out and check it out, so that's what he did. He ended up coming across a boy who was like on the other side of the fence, a Jew, and he, like Bruno himself, he's like a German, right, from his father, and he meets this little Jew boy, and basically they talk and they hang out, but it's through a fence, like barbed wires that are like separating the Jews and the Germans. So yeah, they say if his father or something sees them in contact, like he could, like, this could ruin both of their lives. Like the kid could, like, the Jew could be killed, right? And then same with Bruno, like, you never know, but his father works in it.
How old is Bruno?
It's like 9. Yeah. That's good.
Okay. In my book, at the last discussion, we ended as Werner was beginning his training in the German forces. It was with, I believe it was 60-something other kids his age, and then there was like a ton of other ages and stuff, but around his age, I think it was 60-something. And then we were learning about a little bit about some of the people he was meeting, mainly Frederick. Because that was like his main friend, like he slept in the bunk above him, and then also about like the training and agility and the rifle things and all the different stuff they were doing.
And this is like a camp, or is it?
It's like, yeah, it's in his, when
Cadets?
he was sent, yeah, it's kind of like
okay.
cadets. So he was sent from the orphanage. He was like selected. He went and did the 2 weeks of exams, and then he was chosen. So then he
And
was
this
sent
is
to
the German boy.
Yes, so he was sent to like the German forces to do some training. So we were getting into like the beginning of that in the last one, and then Marie, her part of the story, she had reached her great uncle's house, and we were just learning about like how she was settling in. So how she was learning the house, the 6 flights of stairs, all of that, and she had no idea at this point about 2 of the rooms in the house, which I'll kind of get into after.
Oh, I have that too.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, that's okay. But she had just met her great uncle, but hadn't been outside because her father kept saying, "Not now,
He had to
Marie,
work.
not now." Yeah, he had to work, and he didn't think it was safe for her to go out alone, or even with I think her name was. Yeah, I forgot her name. The woman, or her uncle, because she hadn't really met him yet. He had just kind of briefly come out, and then he locks himself in for days at a time.
Madame Manek is her name.
Yes. So as they were settling in at the last part, basically, and now I haven't got to read too much of it, but I've read quite a bit into the next part. So Werner's story has progressed a lot because it's gotten into like a really intense part of the training. So during one of their tests, it was like what Werner's good at, the radios and things like that. So they were given a couple supplies and asked to build something. We have the same thing, don't we?
Yeah, we
That's
do.
fine. We were asked to, or he was asked to build something with all the other students, and all of the other students were like, "What is going on? What am I supposed to do?" And Werner just kind of like let it think
He was
in his
singled out
head.
by
Yeah.
the examiner.
Yeah, and he did it in like 2 minutes or something crazy, and then the examiner was like, "What's your mistake? Like, I don't believe you." And then he did it perfectly. So then he was like, "Okay, build this," and he did. So he built a few other things, and then he was sent to this guy. I don't know. He's like one of the guys higher up, and then with him was a 17-year-old boy who's like the guy that there's so many rumors about that all of the younger trainees like Werner and stuff are like scared of, right? Like he's the person that you kind of look up to, but you also fear. So he goes and he's sent to a room with them, and he gets him to do like some math equations and things like that to test his like brain, and then he ends up sending him to the laboratory every night. So now Werner is working in this laboratory every night practicing like equations, transmitters, making signals reach and things like that, so like what he's good at, but he doesn't know why. And then on the other hand, Marie is kind of in a situation, not so much herself but her father. So
Can I say
we've
something about before you go to Marie?
Yeah, go ahead.
With the equations that he was getting him to do, Werner wasn't fully aware of what the equations were.
Yeah.
Werner wasn't aware of the mathematical, the algebraic part
Yeah.
of the things.
He
He was
did
good with the
just
mechanical.
slightly, yeah.
He could build them. He didn't understand the wavelengths and the like tan over sine b equations.
Yeah, but he figured it out. So, and then Marie, so she has settled in, and then she started to see like when her uncle kind of comes out and then shuts himself in for days. When he comes out again, he's out one day with her, and she starts to see how he has the moments where he like, because he was involved in the First World War,
Like
I
PTSD.
believe. Yeah, so he has really bad PTSD from it because his brother died. I think it was his brother, right?
And she's in France, right? Or
She's in a town called Saint Malo right now.
She's on the edge of France.
Yes.
She had to go to
Yeah,
the
because they
second
ran
house.
from Paris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and this was before or after France is invaded?
Germany,
It's
I
kind of
think.
during.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's during.
because in the last discussion we had just ended where the Germans were starting to
Doing
come
the bomb
into
rooms
Saint
and
Malo
stuff, yeah.
even, and yeah,
because
bomb their
because France
Paris
was
and
taken.
stuff.
I think it,
Taken under siege.
Yeah.
it was taken in like
Yes.
19 days, right?
It was one of the earlier ones too.
Yeah.
This will lead to an offshore house,
Yeah.
Oh, so
which is why she's learning everything new.
Yes.
got it.
So at this point, he has one of those moments, and he's like, someone's here. Like he's freaking out. So he takes her hand and he leads her to the kitchen, I think, and there's a trap door that leads into the basement. So now she's like, there's a room here, like a cellar. And they go in there, and then the what's her name, Madame Manek. She comes and she's like, don't scare her, don't scare Marie, nothing's happening, we're okay. But then Marie decides to go down with him anyways to comfort him, and they read their novel that they're reading. So they read for a bit, and he talks to her and kind of explains a little bit more about his PTSD and what happens.
And is she Jewish?
I don't know actually.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
a
not sure.
French name.
Yeah, like it doesn't really say. We don't know about her mother.
So it's more of the fear of the Germans. It's not the
Yeah.
fear of like being
It's
somebody
not
that the
so- I
Germans
She's
don't
not
think-
fleeing. She's just
like she's
not fleeing
like
from the Germans.
like her father is fleeing for safety.
From the war. Yeah.
From the
She doesn't
war.
want to be a casualty.
Got it. Okay. Like
Yeah.
this is not
Because
like
I don't think they're Jewish. Sorry, I can't talk. I think that they're French.
Well,
I
France
think
was
they're
an
French.
allied country,
Yeah,
and so any
Yeah,
allied country
yeah.
near Germany was getting bombed.
yeah.
yeah, exactly.
But so I think they're French and they're fleeing from the conflict itself because her father also doesn't want to be
Got
involved.
it. Okay.
And then we also know that her father has the Sea of Flames, which is the diamond that we talked about, I think, in the first one, in the first discussion. So it's like the diamond that everyone's looking for. Like it's like 100 and something carats. Is that what it's called? And it's supposed to bring like misfortune to whoever has it. So they made 4 copies of it, like 3 replicas, and then the main one, and they split them up so no one knows who has the real one. So her father has one, but Marie doesn't know.
Was it misfortune to the holder or misfortune to the people around the holder?
Around the holder, because the holder lives forever with it.
Oh.
So, but
Philosopher's
everyone
Stone.
around it
Oh.
has misfortune.
Okay.
It's the
Okay.
Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah. So her father, at this point in the novel, pretty much where I'm at, her father has left to go back to Paris, I think, to drop off the diamond basically and be like, hey, I'm
Get
getting
this
rid of
away from
this.
me,
Yeah,
yeah.
because he doesn't know if it's real or not. But and on his way there, he was supposed to be gone for 10 days, and on his way there, he's arrested by the Germans. And he's basically gone so far. I think it's like 6 days for questioning. Nothing. That he's not told anything. He doesn't get any paper. He doesn't get to write a letter. He doesn't get a phone call. Nothing. So they're just like,
That's how
no.
the Germans did it.
What?
That's how the Germans did it. They
Yeah.
took people.
Yeah, exactly. So he
took
can't
them, like-
contact his daughter, who he promised 10 days at the most, like 7 to 10 days, and it's already been like 6 or 7, and he's
Like they're
He's on his way to
basically
Germany.
like they're torturing him basically.
they're
we don't know.
so
or they
far
just
we
question-
don't know. So far they're taking him
Oh,
with
so
a bunch of
it's-
other people to Germany. I'm pretty sure.
Got it.
It doesn't necessarily say, and then it skips ahead to the future, kind of like it did before, where Werner's in the basement and Marie is hiding in her uncle's house, and the bombing and everything is going on. So that's where I'm at right now, where it's kind of skipped ahead, and I just passed that, but I haven't gone past that.
Yeah, there's a contrast for that part. She has,
Yes.
right before that switches, she's talking about how the birds are chirping, the windows are open, she can hear the ocean, and then she can hear the slight hum of the engine playing way up above, and then it jumps to like a war zone later on. But we don't have an image. They give imagery through what she can hear. Like she can hear the
Yeah.
rumbling, she can hear the planes, she can hear the crazy stuff going on outside. But it's a big contrast. Like Anthony Doerr actually made his intention to make a big jump cut, so we're like, whoa, we're shocked when it
Mhm.
changes.
Go ahead.
For fugitive pieces, but I can't speak today. Fugitive pieces. Jacob and Athos have settled down in Toronto. They're starting to make friends within the Greek community there, and going for walks around the area and getting to know the area. And a while after that, Athos dies of old age, and then there is a time jump, and suddenly Jacob is married, which kind of came out of left field. and where I'm at now, he is thinking about his sister, who, as far as he knows, was killed in Poland, where he was born and raised. Honestly, a lot of what I've read this time has been him reflecting in details, and not a lot has actually progressed in the story.
Okay.
The feel of
It's
it
is it a lot of like background information
Some of
towards
it.
the climax kind of?
I don't know, it feels like the climax is already passed within 100 pages of the beginning in a 300-page book.
So it's kind of like going.
It feels like the last 10 pages of the book continuously, which is
Interesting.
not very fun to read.
That's fair.
Okay, so I'm gonna skip my summary here since Jaden recapped everything that I had. So I'm gonna jump to my first question, which is which lines have hidden meaning in the story. So for Marie, I'm gonna start off with there's one line where she was at the offshore house that she was staying at, and they were learning. Her great uncle was explaining to her one of the songs that was coming through the radio, So there's where, and it is splendid to drowse off, to be warm and fed, to feel the sentence push her up and carry her away. So he's trying, they're in the cellar, he's trying to comfort her to understand what's going on and how he feels. It's kind of an imagery of how he's trapped, but he has his eyes. It's ironic since Marie is trapped, but she's literally trapped inside of her own head. She can't get out. So in his own words, the great uncle is trying to escape, trying to find a means to escape from himself. So he's relaying it through music, which lots of people do who have a traumatic experience. So we see that this is an underlying concept through the entire book that we've read up to so far. They're just trying to escape. They're trying to find salvation, just from both characters, even Werner as well. Werner is a bit more naive in the way that he's going through his exams. Like, he passes 2 exams when Dr. Hoffman was asking him to build small trinkets. He asked him what Werner could create, and Werner says doorbells, he could create ohmmeters for measuring the current of electronics, and he could do radios. And so Dr. Hoffman was like, show me it, let's see what you can do. And Werner didn't understand that if he made a mistake, it could be quit for him. He's out of the program. He was in an orphanage, what's next for him if he didn't make it? He had no idea. But since he had no fear of that, he didn't realize that was happening. He just thought it was like a game, sort of. So once he made it in, he didn't realize what kind of privilege he had to be working alongside. He had the privilege to meet the older boy, the one who's the respected guy who's the Sticky 17. He's like the elite guy that they were all looking up to. So the fact that he made it into that group separated him from the other boys, and the other boys were, in a sense, jealous that he made it out of there. So Werner is now in the army. He's in cadet training program, and he's in the final stage. So from now, we're not quite sure where he'll go, but we think he's going to make it somewhere to great meaning in the story later on.
Okay. Well, I have one kind of line that kind of explains like where they're at in the story with like all the concentration camps, and it's no one quite knew that they had been turned into production lines of death, but they knew that people were not coming back. And this kind of relates back to kind of how he was thinking of himself when he was kind of trapped, when he was captured, when he was seeing all this death around him. When like the outside world has no idea that this is going on. Because at the time, Germany kind of did these concentration camps, and it kind of portrayed them as special custody in a way. It's kind of protective custody in a way, to kind of protect all these like anti-Germany, like Jewish people, all these gypsies, as kind of like taking them away so none of the German people or the SS would hurt them.
Wait, sorry, who's doing the protective custody thing?
How they're like making
How they're
it seem.
advertising the camp.
Yes, like
So
the
instead of it
Nazi
being a
party.
bad thing, they're making it seem like a good thing because they're keeping them safe. When in reality,
Well,
they're
like this is like it's not really in the book, but it relates into the book.
Oh. Okay, okay.
With Auschwitz. Yes, it's they're kind of making it like in real life in 1940 something. They portrayed concentration camps as like
Salvation.
yeah, basically special custody for these people, and that's how they got away with it for so long. It's because they had no
Because no
idea
one
what was
knew.
going into this, and it kind of sees like when the plane flew over, the American plane.
They didn't
thought
think anything
they
of
didn't-
it.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't think anything of it.
Which is why they waited until after the plane passed.
Exactly.
Okay.
They didn't think anything of it. They thought it was special custody.
That's crazy. That is.
Only the people, the families who were like of the people, like
Yeah.
Jewish people, were taken, knew that they would never come back, because Lael, when he left, the German people said, "Oh, you're coming to work for us. You're coming to do labor for us. We're going to build you like camps, and we're going to take all these Jewish people, and we're going to save them, basically." But when Lael got there, he instantly knew what was happening, and he knew that he would never get back.
So was Lael aware of what was happening with the concentration camps, or was he?
No, nobody was like when he
So
got.
this is like very early
When-
stage concentration camp kind of thing.
Oh yeah. Like this is like
This is
concentration camps were around before Hitler got into kind of his like leadership.
Yeah.
But as when he got into leadership and World War II happened, he would start corralling all these people. And when Layl was taken in chapter 1 or 2, it said that he was like forced into a cattle car with tens of like a ton of Jewish men, and they were all taken to this place, and they were starved for 3 or 4 days, and they had no idea where they were going. They thought they were going to do work, and I'm just saying, like, it's the hidden meaning of how, like, at the outside world, they thought this was fine, but to the families who the people were taken, they didn't even know, or they knew that they would never come back.
Yeah, like for what you said there, what can relate to the model for Auschwitz model, I should say,
Like,
is
it's kind of like, I guess.
Arbeit macht frei is work will set you free, right? So
Exactly,
they're
yeah.
going in thinking, I'm going to work here and I'm going to get out.
Exactly.
They had no
And
intention.
they'll
That
be
was the
kept
motto.
safe.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're
they-
like, I'm
they-
gonna go here, I'll work, I'll be kept safe, all for free, but they're safe, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what their thought was, and then they get out and have their freedom.
Exactly. But no, as soon as they got into the camp,
And
they
then
were
it's
never
just
well. Actually, in the
completely
book,
changed.
there was one guy who tried to escape, and he was captured. Obviously, when he came back, he went to a nearby town. He was captured by the SS.
Oh, so he did escape.
He did.
Well,
He did
shortly.
escape
Well, for a short time.
because he went out to do
Last
work
time.
in the yard, and he went out to relieve
So-
himself. And when he was coming back, everybody was walking away, and he thought if he would run at them, then they would shoot at him. So he went back into the forest and kept walking. And they finally found him, and they took him back to the camp, and he was going to be hung the next day.
Yeah, that's lights up for him.
So was he found in the town because someone turned him in, or they just saw him and were like, that
They
guy?
saw the tattoo on his arm.
Oh,
Oh, right. Forgot about the tattoo.
the whole model of the book.
Yeah.
Or,
I forget they're not covered, so I was like, wait. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, I think the first thing would be to get a long sleeve shirt.
Right? Like,
I mean,
cover it.
they're wearing pajamas pretty
That's
much.
true. They're wearing the whole like outfit and.
yeah.
The boy in striped pajamas made some cross connection there.
Or,
Okay.
Okay, so with the hidden meanings, so like Bruno, he's 9 years old. He doesn't know he doesn't really know what's going on with like the whole war situation and like why there's a campsite on the other side with like the fence. But there's one line that says by the author, Bruno was sure that he had never seen a skinnier or sadder boy in his life, but decided that he'd be better talk to him. So that like kind of means that obviously Bruno had no idea what was going on, but he saw a boy his age and he decided to go talk to him. And even though there was a fence like, you know, in between them, that kind of didn't stop him or the other Jew boy to like ever come in touch. And they actually did that continuously, like on multiple days. Just every day they would go and see each other and talk. And the fence around the concentration camp is like used to keep the prisoners in and everyone else out and away from seeing the horror of what happens inside.
well, yeah, I mean, in my book, it describes like the children in the camps, and the children in the camps didn't even know what was going on
No.
because the
Yeah.
parents would keep it from them. That they
Yeah.
were basically eventually going to die.
Well,
It's the horror.
I guess no
conversation.
children want to know that.
Yeah. Like it's not really easy to tell a
To hear,
child
yeah.
that you're about to
Well,
die.
It's hard for them to
What-
understand, right?
Yeah.
Did they
they are
describe
very small.
which type of concentration camp it was? Because there's different types of like Auschwitz was basically an extermination camp.
This one was the one with gas tanks. It had gas tanks.
Oh yes. Oh, then it probably was solely for Jews and solely for
Yeah.
extermination.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll try and do mine kind of quickly so we can get to at least one more question.
Yes.
We talk a lot. I used an example from Werner. So I used the line, who is the weakest member of the corpse, I think you say. It's on page 192. And I used it because it's where there's the commander, and he's one of basically the guy who trains them. And this is like, he lines them up and he calls out a boy from wherever. So he calls out this boy named Helmut Rodel. I'm not sure how to say that. And he asks the boy, who is the weakest member of the corpse. He's done this once before that we know of, like that it's explained. Sorry?
Core. P.S. is silent.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to say that. I think that's the last time I have to say it. It's okay. But he's asked this once before, and basically what they do is they whoever gets called looks around, chooses a kid. So last time it was like a smaller guy, couldn't run as fast, whatever. The commander gives him a 10-second head start, and he runs, and he has to run a certain distance. After that 10 seconds, the rest of the group runs, and if they catch up, we know something bad happens, but we don't know what. The first guy made it because he was terrified, so he's running for his life. Yeah. When this happens, the boy named Helmet calls on Frederick, who is Werner's friend, the one who sleeps above him, and he's a very distracted guy, so he's always like looking up. He's super smart, and he knows like he'll hear a bird's call and he'll know what type of bird it is. He'll see it from a far distance and know what type of bird it is. So, but he's that kind of person. He's not the most athletic. He's not the biggest. He's not the smallest.
He's average.
He's middle.
He's average.
He's
Exactly.
smarter.
So this boy points at him without hesitation, and the guy doesn't even say anything. The commander, he just goes 10, and he's kind of distracted, not really processing, and just stands there. And Werner, he goes 9, and Werner tells him to run. So he realizes, he runs, and he keeps going, and after 10 counts, the group goes and they catch up. Because now, obviously, they're pretty desperate because they want to know what happens, and, like...
Kids being kids, they
Yeah.
want to see what's happening.
So after that, he hands Helmet, like, a cord or something, like a rope almost. I imagine it like a black whip, basically.
Oh.
And he slashes him. And he keeps going until the commander says stop. He just does it over and over to the face, the front of him too. Face, neck, hands.
Like not even the back?
No, not the back. So Frederick doesn't flinch the first 2 or 3 times, and then he throws his hands up, and then by the end of it, he's beaten, his eyes swollen shut, and then he gets up and keeps running because the guy goes, "Are you the weakest?" And he goes, "No, sir," and gets up and goes again.
That's
keeps
motivation.
going. Yeah, so I chose this because the meaning behind it, like the literal meaning, I think is like, who's the weakest member? Who's going to do the worst? Who's going to get kicked out next? But for me, when I looked at this, the meaning was like not how strong and how fast they were. It was because he's obviously not very strong or fast, but he's smart, right? But it doesn't. So I think that the weakness doesn't actually mean weak, but it more of like symbolizes the unwanted qualities, because the forces don't want like someone who's super smart necessarily. They want a strong, a fast army. They don't care about wits half the time, unless it's like Werner, where he can do radio signals and things like that. But so I think like this one, the hidden meaning was that the weakness didn't really mean weak. It just meant he didn't have the quality that they were looking for.
Well, I mean, that kind of happened in the Tattoo of Auschwitz as well, when Lael was working in like the regular camps, because after he got like captured and beaten, he would go work in the labor camps because he was no longer the tattooer.
Yeah.
And they would take big boulders from one side of the camp to the other, and the last person would just get shot by the SS for fun because he was the weakest, he was the worst, and Lael was always the second to last, even though he was beaten to a pulp and he could barely walk. And at the end of the day, they would carry the corpses and take them off because they would kill so many of them.
Wow.
Okay.
And just before Georgia, you go here, we're gonna get, since we got called the time here, we're gonna do a quick. We're just gonna get you in here, and then we're just gonna wrap it all up here. We don't have
We can do
time.
one more. We can do one more.
One more question.
One more.
We can do it.
We'll do it really quick though.
Yeah, one more real quick.
Yeah. Go ahead, Georgia.
Okay. So, from what I know, a line of hidden meaning is Jakob talking about himself, and Athos says, "We were a vine and a fence, but who was the vine?" We each would have answered differently. So he's saying that he knew that the two of them leaned on each other, and that they each would have disagreed on who was supporting the other more and who needed the other more.
Okay, so the first little bit there, I blended all of my questions together into one thing, so I'm gonna go through the last part here, which is yeah, no, I got all that. My first question.
Oh, you
I
did?
put it all together. Yeah.
Oh, what?
So I'll go off what happened with Werner at the end of his training. At the end of the 2 weeks, he was for what makes him stronger. I say this is one of our own questions we created. So we're trying to find out as how the protagonist went through the story, how he got better, and how he developed into more of a more dynamic character. So what really stood out for me is how Werner, once he got to the end of the camp, he started to realize that things were different for the other boys throughout his corps. They were getting cut, they were getting beaten, and he didn't seem to be that. He wasn't being singled out, so he started to realize that he wasn't doing something wrong. He was actually doing something right. So he's like, okay, I'm going to hone on to this, and I'm not going to stray away from this fact.
Mhm.
So that's what's keeping him so far straight on the straight and narrows.
Okay. So, well, I was going to do the literary devices irony because I have a really good example. Because when Lael was taken and he was tortured, he was whipped very bad and he was marked up in you know how when you do lashings, there's big lines that start across the back and across
Yeah.
the buttocks because he was whipped all through his back, his legs, his back, and his butt. So he says, because he's a tattooer, he marks everybody for life. He marks everybody. He marked hundreds of thousands of people for the rest of their life.
Like Black Dog.
And he asks himself, what happens if the tattooer really deserves to be marked himself? Because he is marked himself with his own tattoo, but he's marked so many people, he's actually starting to question his own job that he does, and if he should be rewarded or not with these kind of marks that are left on his back.
Yeah.
And it's kind of irony because he's the tattooer,
Yes.
he's being marked himself by being tortured.
I agree.
Okay. I have one for the literary device. So the book really has a lot of dramatic irony. Is when the audience knows more than the character. And in the beginning, Bruno is running home from school with his friends, and he sees people being pushed onto a truck, and he doesn't realize that they are Jews, which they are, but therefore it is dramatic irony, and yeah, Bruno's just found.
Okay.
Yeah, because he doesn't know that they are Jews that are coming into the camp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
He doesn't really know anything about it. He's a child.
yeah, he doesn't, so. And he even hangs out with that one kid too, just through the fence.
Because he
Yeah.
has no judgment and stuff based because
Well, he's
They
a
don't
child.
know. Yeah.
Children don't really
They don't
have
know.
judgment.
They
They
don't
don't
care.
see
it's
another
not the
person
same
as a different
situation, right?
person. They
yeah,
see each
exactly.
other as two children acting the same.
Mhm.
Because there were barely any other children there, right?
Yeah.
So the only way they can entertain themselves was to find other children.
And that's what they did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so for literary devices and irony, I used, I kind of used a symbol. So I tied it into how the author uses the characters' experiences and symbols and compares them and gives us a little bit more understanding and compassion towards the characters. So I used the factor of blindness. So Marie herself is blind, and we know that her other senses are heightened because of it, and she's incredibly, oh my gosh, smart, but is a little bit codependent at times in new places. But I used it because when Werner is stuck under the hotel, he has the sense of blindness because his lights go out. In a bombing thing, all of the power goes out, the lights go out. His candle, I think it was, or flashlight or whatever, is running out of battery, so they can't turn them on much. But when he's stuck underground, it's all dark and it leaves him feeling blind. But he kind of realizes, which is the ironic part, I think it's a little bit situational because Marie herself is blind, and then Werner kind of uses that to realize that in the dark, it's not fully dark. He can use his imagination. He can make out his fingers a little bit. He can make out things around him eventually. Whereas Marie, on the other hand, uses her imagination, and she does the exact same thing, but she can imagine the color of it because she's so used to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of tied that together and used the word blindness as a symbol and then put it into irony.
I found a few metaphors in my book, but I didn't understand any of them, so.
Fair.
That's fair enough.
Okay, so I guess that sums up our third discussion. Thank you guys for tuning into our radio.
Oh,